Welcome back to Startup Hack. I'm Spencer Thomason, and with my 25 years of development experience here at Startup Hack, we turn beginners into full-stack developers in as little as 3 months. Today, we're diving into the world of asynchronous queue systems with Redis and .NET. This powerful combination can help you build efficient and scalable applications. Now, let's break this down and dig into our video. All right, so now as always, make sure that you pull down the code samples because down in the comments down below, we have all the different code samples. And so make sure that you go and hit those down below, hit that link and pull those down. There's hundreds of different code samples. We provide all the code. So we're gonna run through some slides and talk about some of these principles here really quick, and then we'll jump into the code without too much delay. So today we're gonna talk about queuing systems with Redis and ASP.NET. So an asynchronous queue systems allows tasks to be processed in the background, freeing up your application to handle other requests. Redis is a fantastic choice for implementing such a system due to its speed and versatility. In a .NET environment, you can leverage Redis to manage background tasks efficiently. This setup is ideal for scenarios where you need to process jobs asynchronously, such as sending emails, processing files, or handling long-running computations. My rules with my team is if something's going to take longer than a second, it should probably be put into a queue to be done. Because if it's more than a second, that's too long for one web request. All right, now to get started with Redis in your .NET application, you first need to install Redis and the StackExchange.Redis library. Now Redis can either be set up locally or they do offer a cloud environment that starts at just $5 a month, depending on your different needs. Now, the StackExchange.Redis library provides a robust API for interacting with Redis from your .NET code. And once you install it, you can configure your connection and start pushing tasks to the Redis queue. So if you use their $5 a month service, it's super easy. And if you set it up on your server, we found it also super easy. Now, talking a little bit about implementing the queuing system involves creating a procedure to add tasks to the queue and a consumer to process them. In your .NET application, the producer can be any part of your code that generates tasks while the consumer runs in the background, processing tasks as they come in. Using async await in your consumer ensures that your application remains responsive. This setup allows you to handle tasks asynchronously, improving the overall performance and scalability of your application. So you can see the job's going to come in, and you're going to see the producer is what's going to put it into the queue, and then the consumer or the background process is what's going to pop it off the queue, the next one off the queue, and process it. So therefore, unless somehow you have something that's queuing faster than you're processing, which I don't usually run into the case, that to be the case. Now, a robust queuing system needs to be able to handle failures gracefully. With Redis, you can implement mechanisms to retry failed tasks. By setting up a retry policy, you can ensure that tasks are not lost and are retried at a specified number of times before they're being marked as failed. This approach helps maintain the reliability of your system, ensuring that tasks are eventually completed even if they initially fail. And we'll go through all of that. So again, make sure that you pull down the code samples. Look at the link down below because we do have the code samples down below. And so as always, if I've missed something or messed something up or there's something wrong with the code samples, leave us a comment. I love to have good, healthy debate. Love having a good, healthy conversation. All right, so let's dive into our code samples here. All right, so this code sample is actually set up to run in the cloud. Now, for obvious reasons, I'm not going to include this, so I'm not going to be able to run this at runtime, but this code does run. So even though it's kind of cranky, you can see that it's not showing that it's compiling. That's because it wants us to be able to connect to their system. In order to connect to their system, we have to put in our password and users and all that stuff, and didn't really want to expose that out on the internet. But this code does run if you sign up and get your Redis set up here. So this is using just a minimal web API, very simple. You can see that it creates the connection, and then we're adding Swagger, and then we're also adding the scope of an iJob service, job and queuing service. So we're adding this, and let's dive into this here for a second here and take a look at what we have here. So this is your job and queue service. So you'll see that you'll be able to enqueue a job using async, of course, right? And this is where it will list a push. So you would push a job, right? We would take this job, which is just a model. And you can see just very simple ID, name, status, right? We take this job, so we take this job, okay, let's go back into our enqueue service here. So we take this job and we push it onto the stack, right? And then we set the async and we set the status to queued, right? Now this is the one that's the consumer is then gonna go and get the jobs, right? And we'll be able to just say, hey, grab me the next job, and then it will deserialize it out to a Redis job, and you see that you'll be able to grab it and then be able to add it and run it for the processing, right? In this case, then you would kick it off to a processing. So we can see that we have our the enqueue service. This is just a controller that we're using for enqueuing, and then we have our dequeue service, right? So sorry, that one was the enqueue service. Oh, I'm in the controller. So in the enqueue service, we can see that we are queuing it up, and we're getting the hashtag. So this is actually going to check, sorry, the statuses of the job. This will fetch all the jobs in the queue as long as their as well as their status, right? Now, this is the dequeue, or the consumer, the one that's going to pull them off the stack and then process them, right? So in this case, it's going to execute. This is where it's going to start, right? So it'll dequeue a job, and this is just, a sample right here. So simulate, time to complete the job, right? And then we would mark the job as complete. So if we go to this, what that's going to do is now we're just going to set it and set the job to complete, right? And so, when we start processing the job, part of this is that we're going to actually dequeue and then also mark it as in progress. So this will allow us to change it from queued to in progress so that we can keep track of which jobs we've completed. Then after that, once it's done, it will actually mark the job as completed. So this is a very simple, like you can see this is very simple with just a couple of different service classes, right? We have our enqueue and our dequeue service class. And now as we run this, what we would do here is we can actually see that we're just creating a new freezing, we're creating this array here, right? The new array. And then we're just creating a weather forecast endpoint here. And this one just actually is predicting. And what we're doing here is we're just grabbing a new set of these. And so this one will take this weather forecast and grab it and set it up to set the summaries for a set of random summaries, right? So that we can just generate some different things. And what this will do is it will then set up a series of these to run. So what this part is doing is just running our, is just setting up the test data, right? So this is just setting up and running through a range of 5 and creating 5 different pieces of test data for us. So once this happens, it will create all those, it will enqueue them all, and then you'd be able to see it enqueue them all and then see it dequeue. And so we have our controller here, which is where we would then go and test this. And again, this is running a minimal web API, and so we'd be able to actually run and hit these controllers, right? And then with this, we'd be able to hand it a new job, have it enqueue these tasks, and we'd be able to also get all of the tasks through this remaining one. And you can see it's just running these enqueuer services. So this is, and then what we would do is in the background, we would have a process that would run in the background, that will kick off and run so that we can have these pop off the queue and run on an interval. So what we would want to set up here is set up a scheduler that's going to run and execute this task and execute it on some interval, right? So that it could run through and take all of the queued jobs and then run them and execute each of them through. And so in this case, we would just, we can see that we have an endpoint that we could run to call to get that. So we would create an endpoint to simulate that, or what you would really want to do is then have a scheduler that would run that and dequeue them and do this processing in the background. So we can see that nothing's referencing this. We would just want to, it's outside of the scope of this demonstration, but we'd want to have a simple service in the background that would just sit and queue these off. And so you can use a pretty simple .NET scheduler to kick this off and run this in the background so that you wouldn't have to do it in real time. So anyways, that's kind of through our code samples. Make sure you download this, play with it. Go, sign up for that. Either sign up for, create a local Docker with Redis, or set up your free, your $5 a month Redis configuration in the cloud. Point it at this, and this will all kick off and start running. So that's all of our code samples for today. Make sure that you like and subscribe. Also, make sure that you pull down these code samples because they're very helpful. And also make sure you leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you, and we will catch you guys next time. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel because we bring you lots of great tutorials and tips that every developer should know. See you next time.